David, talk to me a little bit about the legacy here of Anthony Kennedy and his position on the court.
Well, this is actually poignant for me because Justice Kennedy replaced my Justice Powell. He's the one, he took over his chambers. Actually, he's in the chambers that I occupied for a year as a law clerk. So this is poignant. I mean, as has been said, he succeeded Sandra Day O'Connor as sort of the swing vote. By the way, before that, my old boss, Lewis Powell, was thought to be the swing vote. He was often in the 5-4 majority as a practical matter. He certainly occupied that role. He also prided himself a great deal on the way he wrote. He took his writing terribly seriously. And on particularly things like affirmative action and some women's rights issues and things like that was often a key vote. It would not vote in lockstep with the conservatives. So we don't know. By the way, the one thing I would say is you never know what's going to go in the Supreme Court because once they get there, people change who they are. And you also don't know what the dynamics within the Supreme Court are because if someone is very persuasive, then they can bring people around to them. And if they're not, they can be a loner.
But this is a very poignant moment as well for Trump again to be able to, provided he can get his choice through, of course, to shift further the balance that we see here in the Supreme Court. Absolutely,
and we have to balance as we look at this. On the one hand, the hyper-partisanship that we see in Washington, and particularly in the Senate, that would have to confirm. On the one hand, on the other hand, exactly what President Trump has done so far in the Supreme Court, not just the appointment of Neil Gorsuch. He came out early on with a list of possible appointees, you remember? I mean, he's playing this face up. His hand is face up on this thing, and he has some very qualified people there. Yes, right of center, conservative justices, no question about that. But don't underestimate him, because from what we've seen so far, he has the ability to find very qualified people that it's hard to take much issue with.
Let's bring in and get some more context now. Our Supreme Court reporter, Greg Stohr, who joins us on the phone. Greg, great to have you with us. Your thoughts here as we see the imminent announcement and the resignation of Anthony Kennedy as of July 31st.
Yeah, it's a huge moment for the court, for the country. Justice Kennedy has been smack in the middle of the court on its biggest, most divisive issues for the past decade. With him leaving the court, there is the potential, a real potential, that there could be a majority to overturn the Roe v. Wade abortion rights decision. Yes. It is hard to overstate how significant this moment is for the nation's law and for its political future.
So we can add a few more in here. I mean, you've mentioned, obviously, Roe and Wade. He upheld warrantless wiretapping, campaign finance restrictions as well. He blew that up. He overturned the DC's handgun ban. I mean, there's a whole host of issues here that could potentially swing going forward.
Yeah, they could. Now, on a lot of those that you just mentioned, he joined with the conservative wing. So
yes.
He's in in the Second Amendment, for example. He is one of the justices that says that the Constitution protects an individual right to own a firearm. But he in many of those areas, has been the justice that is not quite willing to go as far as some of his other conservative colleagues. So on racial discrimination, for example, the court may move to the right. On the death penalty, the court may move to the right. So in addition to the huge swings, there could be some incremental swings in all sorts of areas.
And David Westin was just mentioning that President Trump has sort of a list of backups or replacement justices that he had wanted to nominate even before Gorsuch. How familiar are you with those folks, and what do you see as the view of the next likely contender to be put forward? Well, yeah, this is a list that he developed with the help of the Conservative Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation. They are entirely, maybe almost entirely, but probably entirely conservative to very conservative jurists who have been vetted by, and are trusted by some of the top conservative legal minds in the country. The list of people includes some judges who were appointed by Trump, have been appointed by Trump to federal appeals courts, as well as several judges who he interviewed when he was making the earlier appointment of Neil Gorsuch. It's also interesting that Justice Kennedy would announce this retirement knowing that, right? I mean, Do we know much about the timing of the retirement and why he has decided to do it right now?
Well, justices often wait until the end of the term. Justice Kennedy is 81, so there's an answer right there. He's also somebody, if you talk to his former law clerks, has always thought of himself as a Republican who wanted to go out with a Republican president being able to nominate a successor. It's obviously a time when, with Republicans controlling the Senate, there's a likelihood that the nominee will be confirmed. If say, he had waited until next year, and if Democrats took control of the Senate, there's a possibility that no Trump nominee could be confirmed. It's hard. We've all been wondering whether Justice Kennedy, might do this. It was certainly a possibility, and apparently he just decided that this is the time.
I mean, you pointed out he's 81, but he's by no means the oldest justice here. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's 85, I believe. Is that it now as far as resignations are concerned? As you said, they come at the end of the term, and that's it now.
Yeah, normally it is at the end of the term, and you rarely have two justices deciding to leave the court at the same time. It would be, a shock upon a shock to get another one. Justice Ginsburg, you mentioned, I think has made very clear. She said over and over she won't leave as long as she feels like she can do the job full steam, and it also seems highly, highly unlikely that she would want to leave with this particular president in the White House.
Yes.